Hey everybody, welcome back to Pro AV today. You may notice we're not in our normal studio. That's okay. The show must go on because this next topic is one that's very, very important and is very relevant right now, especially if in the last handful of weeks you've been reading about tools like Chat GPT or assisted AI creativity tools. We're here to hopefully answer some of those questions. Naturally, the creative and creator communities are asking, what does this mean? Am I going to lose my job? I would like to, off the top, kind of hopefully reassure you and say, I don't think you're going to lose your job. I can't guarantee it. But when you go back historically, you look at tools like automated transcription, facial recognition, auto following technology. Those have been designed to help us as a community. But I'd be entirely lying if I said I knew everything about it. So I said, look, I've got to bring on somebody who knows far more about AI and creative tools than I do in the space. So I said, look, we got to bring David on. David Morgan, thanks so much for joining us. David from Cyberlink, chatting today about AI with us.
Hi, Ben. Thanks for having me.
You know, David, we appreciate you coming on because, like I said, kind of from time to time, people just get a little bit scared and are looking for answers, and we're not exempt from that, right? I mean, asking a computer a question and them spitting out a really cohesive response is a little intimidating at sometimes. But, before we dig into some of the current capabilities, where have we come from an AI production standpoint, and how has AI empowered our creative communities?
Yeah, well, I think we're seeing kind of the next revolution of AI. The one where I got involved, I came into Cyberlink about 4 years ago. They were already doing AI. That was really kind of my first experience on the creative front, working with AI. And really, what it was a support tool and basically a way to speed up processes that would have been like very repetitive, or to kind of do more interesting things. But it wasn't like generative, right? You weren't creating something from nothing. You were taking something and kind of adapting it. For example, one of the first tools we had was what we called AI style transfers. We were one of the first companies to point out where you could basically, we ran a bunch of like paintings through and created a model, and where basically you could take either a photo or video and turn it into that style, right? You would take like thousands of paintings, analyze them, and then make anything look like that. But that all had to have something be like something for it to adapt into. And you couldn't just create it from scratch. And that's kind of where AI was when I got in. Obviously, we're in the next step, which is completely generating something from scratch. And I think that's what's kind of terrifying everybody, not sharing what that means. What is this? I think a misconception that's happening is like people are like, oh, it's just copy and pasting, right? I see a lot of people out there being like, oh, you just stole all this. I mean, that's a debate, but I think people have a very big misconception of what AI is and what it's doing at this stage, opposed to the past. It was a lot easier to see what AI was, right? Like I'm sure everybody's done the background replacement with AI where it automatically detects something and removes it, and things like that. So that's all been in the background. People haven't been really paying attention, but that's been going on like 5, 6 years now. And a lot of the tools people have been using creatively have already had AI integrated in. It's just now it's at a different level that I think people are like, wait, what is this? What's going on? And it's at a level where it's not just professional creators, it's also consumers using it. Like Linza blowing up with their tool, which was already on the market, just people didn't know about it yet. And then all of a sudden everybody's like, what is this? It's kind of an interesting phenomenon to kind of have seen it being this like support tool, I would call it. Like it was complete support. You couldn't do anything with it unless you had something to use it with, to now it's just kind of its own thing. Um,
Well, interestingly enough, I love the points that you bring up. And, when you start talking about AI being assistive in nature with the content creation, naturally, I kind of jump to that content aware fill and the automatic background removal tools of Photoshop, and that being one of the first iterations of at least prosumer level AI. And those kind of, it grinding the gears a little bit of those pros who, spent their years cutting their teeth with having to go in pixel by pixel and, rotoscope and things like that. But I love that you bring up the point that AI is designed to be assistive in nature, right? And sure, that kind of closes the gap a little bit from, things that maybe traditionally were a little bit more laborious. But, one of the questions, like I mentioned in the intro, that people kind of get all the time, or people ask all the time is, am I about to lose my job? And I really don't think so, because the nature of AI is a little bit, it's a little bit more assistive. But how do you think people should be responding in the creator community, that are a little bit more afraid of kind of the something from nothing AI tools?
well, the concept artists are terrified right now. And I'll be honest, they should be. I know people in the industry, like film industry, animation industry, that have used AI to do concept art. One thing that I think people need to be aware of, though, which I talked to a couple of these people, and I don't think they realize it. None of that's copyrightable, right? Nothing you create with AI, you own. So anybody can use it. So no major industry can use this to actually create content that they're going to really be able to make their own, which is huge, right? So if I create a book, say, from AI, and I sell it, anybody can go sell that book, right? It's public domain, essentially. There are no laws preventing anybody else from using that. So as far as artwork that is protected is only going to be created by humans, at least right now. So that's huge. Knowing that that the only work that can be protected lets you know that jobs aren't going away on that side. Are some jobs going to be affected on maybe other aspects where people don't care so much? For example, like blog writers. Yeah, this could change how people do blogs, for example. I know I've heard a number of people talking about how they essentially just use Jarvis to take articles that already exist and rewrite them. I know plenty of people that are doing things like this. And I've experimented working with AI and writing articles and things like that. It's definitely not good quality all the time, and there's definitely a lot of editing. It's more shifting kind of the job. It's like more strategy based, more editor based. Um, but yeah, it's going to affect jobs to a certain extent. You have to accept that, right? If you have something that can produce, that can then be edited, it's going to affect the number of people you need to do something. It doesn't mean that there won't be new jobs created out of that, which I think is what people need to keep in mind is whenever there's a new technology, new jobs are created. For example, you couldn't be an influencer 20 years ago. That did not exist. There was no such thing as a YouTube star, an influencer, or anything like that. So I think from that aspect, what jobs could come out of that could be way cooler than what you're doing right now. And I think keeping that in mind is more important than, oh, I might lose my job. For me, that's coming from like a scarcity mindset, being worried about, oh, we have to stay in these old styles of things, opposed to being like, what can this actually do for us? What does this actually open my time to do now? Instead of having to sit there and plug away at 2,000 words, what if those 2,000 words could just appear and then I could go ahead and start editing them? Because sometimes just getting that first pass is the most difficult as a creator in anything. Um, and also, it's not like AI can go in there and do like a master edit, right? We aren't seeing something of the equivalent of like Shakespeare being written, like truly like in depth, truly understanding. You can't get true tech, for example. Like you can't really have an AI write about tech and what's going actually on in there to a truly at this moment time, right? It's going to have errors. It's going to have issues. Even chat has a warning saying this could be inaccurate. Um, so there's a lot going on, but I don't think a fear-based approach to this is the right approach. I think saying where's this going to take us and how can this benefit my work and make me better is probably a better and more beneficial to that person. What are you doing now that this can then empower you to go do more of or branch out of or explore more? How can you grow yourself with AI opposed to how is this going to hamper?
Well, one of the things that I've enjoyed about technological innovations over the years, whether it's video-based DSLRs hitting the market or tools like Canva that are hitting the market now, making it more accessible for people. Eventually down the line, the technological advancements almost always make the end products a little bit better, right? Or make the writing in the long term better. And you kind of gave an example, where yeah, some of the 200 word copywriters, those are things that are going to start to be a little bit more disposable. But you look at the investigative reporters or the feature reporters and things like that. Those are some of the areas, in my opinion, that are going to start to really benefit greatly because there will be some mudding of the waters a little bit when it comes to that lighter weight type content. But as people really embrace some of these tools and step further into their careers, I think that it's going to impact really the industries for the better.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't think I've seen in my time working as a creative anything come along that made the industry worse. You can argue it, but in the end, everybody can make music now. Everybody can make movies. Everybody can make a book and publish it. Like literally, all it's done is open the floodgates to the masses. Like I kind of see people that are kind of afraid of AI, like wanting to hold it, like keep it to themselves, right? They have the fire and they don't want to share it. Whereas AI kind of gives fire to everybody, right? You can, if you don't have necessarily those skills or talents, which some people just don't, but they have visions and they have these things that they want to create. They can finally do that, for better or worse, I guess.
David, one of the topics that you kind of hinted at a minute ago was the idea of intellectual property and copyright. And that is the one where I see a lot of just confusion right now, honestly. Nobody has a great answer because at what point can I modify the AI suggested tools enough to claim ownership for it? We're constantly having conversations about, I was reading about this today, Mickey Mouse and Steamboat Willie becoming public domain soon anyway. And we always have these weird balances of intellectual property and copyright. And this is kind of muddying the waters a little bit. In your experience, and this is maybe where you guys could speak from a Cyberlink perspective, who have been far more helpful and far more going ahead than a lot of people from AI and predictive content creation. But talk a little bit more about that, right? Are there standards that are in place, or is it just kind of the Wild West?
Yeah, well, currently we do not do generative AI for a couple of reasons that I'm not going to go into here. But we have not gone into that space. We're kind of treading lightly into it for, I think, some good reasons. To be completely honest, I think there's some questions that need to be answered before everybody dives into this. I think having one foot in and one foot out is kind of the best way to be right now. For example, the copyright. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody comes along and sues somebody for putting their artwork into an AI system. I mean, do they have the legal right to do that? Have we had legislative on that? Like, can you legally scan copyrighted work and teach it to an AI for profit? I don't think that's been legislated yet. So who knows what could come out of this legally? Obviously, in certain parts of the world, that's not going to matter. But here in America, that does matter. Intellectual property is highly important, and it is very important for artists, and I think for our community of the whole community of this nation of artists and people that benefit from that to have, right? Like, you need to be rewarded for what you create. Now, we're entering that space where the legal system's going to have to come in and basically say this is what's copyrightable and this is what's not. And I'm guessing some big pockets are going to come in this and have some kind of influence on this. What they're going to want, I'm not sure. But I'm very interested to see where it goes. It's so hard to talk about because it's just. I mean, I'll say one thing that I found really interesting. I was just reading about a subreddit where an artist was banned because his art looked too much like AI. He had proof that he created it, and the moderator still banned him, even though he had the proof. And he said, "Well, you need to change your art style because nobody's going to ever believe you made it." So we're entering a very strange spot. But then I read about they're developing AI to basically tell you if it was generated by Chat AI or another AI. So it's just so weird. It's just we've entered a frontier I did not see coming this quickly, and it seems to be evolving even quicker than I think any of us could have imagined.
Well, this really is the one area too, outside of people having questions about job security, things like that. In my opinion, I feel like the copyright and IP conversation really is the long-term conversation with AI, right? And I don't want to chase you too far down that rabbit hole because you're right. When you start when you start creating software that starts pulling from different people's work, whether it's public domain or not, it gets really hairy. It just does. And it's something that we see all the time, in the B2B and enterprise side as well, is that people are a little bit more willing to use these tools, but have to be able to quantify ownership, reach, things like that. And it's really, really challenging when you can't even prove something to be, human generated or not. And, kind of last question here, I'll give you the floor. I mean, obviously Cyberlink doing great things, less from maybe predictive AI and generative AI standpoint. Talk to me about some of the great work that you guys are doing to help support the creator communities.
Yeah, so we have I think around 50 AI tools right now, going from the AI side, everything from sky replacement to background removal to like just being able to apply effects to example like people instantly. So as far as supporting creators, we basically just looked at AI as like how is it that we can let people like that haven't gone to film school, that haven't been spending hours on the computer, come in and do these really cool effects. And that's really what we've been focused on the last 4 or 5 years. It's like making everything super easy, super quick, and basically letting people get the end results that they want without really having to sit there and spend hours doing that. It's funny you talk about how even though people that get upset that they had to spend all these hours rotoscoping. I've actually had the opposite, where I show some people, for example, we had some things come out before Adobe did, like the sky replacement for videos and things like that. Um, and I'd show people that had been working on stuff like this, they were like, "Oh my gosh, this is awesome! I want a copy of this," because it's like, "Oh well, I could take this off my slate and then I can go work on these other things." And that's one thing I love about Cyberlink is we actually aren't trying to take anybody's job. We aren't doing generative for a good reason. We're focused on giving people, we're empowering people, right? Empowering creators. We're not trying to take anything from you. What we're trying to do is give you all the tools to basically whatever's in here can actually get out, right? And that's one thing I find interesting about generative is I don't necessarily think it's what's in here getting out. It's like, oh, I have this concept and then it's going off on its own thing. Um, I really want to see the AI that's really more focused on what's in here, what's in our minds, and actually getting that on the page. For example, with a lot of these AI tools, you aren't able to adapt it once you've generated it, right? It's just it's there, and like either you have to go in and use highly technical skills, or it's basically going to be that, or you can try again. But it's not really being able to then tell that AI to then try. There's no direction, right? You aren't directing AI, and that's a problem, right? If you're truly a creator, you have to be able to direct it. Like any great director, right, is going to mold a performance, right? That's how you can tell. One of the ways you can tell like a great film director is that the performances are amazing. Like when you watch a Scorsese film, you know it's a Scorsese film based on this incredible performances that he's getting from his actors, and he gets credit for that as a creator because he's molded and tuned that. And now people will argue, well, you got to sit there and rewrite prompts and stuff, but it's not quite the same because you aren't going off that one thing that somebody presented to you and then morphing it. And so one thing I do like about Cyberlink, what we've done is we've actually taken more of that approach, right? All of our AI tools will create something for you, and then you can go in and you can change them and work with them and use them and kind of get to the place where you want it to be. Um, and I think that's more where we've always been going and where we're going to continue to go, even if that's not what the trend is. That's fine. I think in the end, supporting the creators and giving them the tools that they want and allowing them to do that is going to pay off for us.
Look, David, we appreciate you coming on the show today. I can almost guarantee you we're going to have you back on at some point because it feels like AI content creation changes every single day, and we didn't even get to
Yeah.
touch on AI being the new SEO, and that we'll call that a tease for our next episode. But look, David Morgan, Cyberlink, we appreciate you coming on Pro AV today.
Ben, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it and great conversation.